Here come the boys. Y'all ready to go swimming, baby? Come on. Give it up. Get out of that water. I tried telling y'all, it's swim lessons, baby.
Rod,
Yes.
thank you so much for coming here. I appreciate it.
No problem, Dallas. Glad to be here with you. Good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you too. I just got done doing a pod with Hank Bijou.
Okay.
And he said one of the mainstays here in Bluehawk activities lately was you. So
Really?
yeah,
Wow, that's quite a compliment.
yeah.
I was going to say I don't know if I should even be in this chair if Hank was sitting in there.
No. He really likes you.
Oh, okay.
That's got to be a good feeling.
Oh, a great
to
feeling.
come
Yeah,
from Coach
yeah.
B.
Oh, Coach B is the best. I mean,
Yeah.
I said I was watching a television show this afternoon, and I went home and took a break, and they asked, I'd like to watch, I'm a big fan of the SEC. I like Alabama. I don't know if you ever heard of Paul Feinbaum, but I really enjoy watching his show. That's usually when my break is, so I just, 5 years ago, was going, and I really enjoy him, and he had Pat Forty on, who was a big fan of Bob Knight, and then he said, well, Bob Knight's, he said, who's on your Mount Rushmore? Is Bob Knight on there? Well, Hank Bijou's the first guy in my Mount Rushmore of coaches. That's how much respect I have for Coach B and the job he did in all the years he was here. So, that's a real nice compliment coming from him.
Let's keep going with that. Who else is on your
there's
Mount Rushmore?
Well, Mount Rushmore, the guy that's coaching right now, Pete Stanton, is on there from Dickinson State. You know, Pete, I mean, not only does he do a great job and done a great job in football, is doing, but look what he did in track and field. I mean, northern part of the country, he won 2 or 3 national championships, 4 or 5 national runner-up, and that's team. So, Pete's on there, and, a lot of other good coaches in the college ranks. I mean, at Dickinson State, Dave Moody in volleyball. Anytime you win a national championship, you got to be pretty high up there. And,
for sure.
And those 3 guys have really done a nice job. I have a lot of respect for all of them. And high school coaches, I'm not going to say anybody because I'm afraid I'll forget
you might
something.
Get in trouble.
Well, I won't get in trouble, but I don't even like to do like the Hank and Pete because you're leaving somebody off. And you go back when I started, there was Roger Huffman. And people like that, Laverne Jessen, I mean, they were just, those guys are just tremendous, and sometimes you get going 30, 40 years later and people forget about them, but they were in the same level as Hank and Pete and those guys too. It was just a different era and a different time.
Right, 100%.
Yeah.
Rod, before we hopped on, you said, I don't get to sit in this chair much and answer questions. And one thing that I personally have always wondered was, how did you find your way into the radio booth?
Well, I started actually when I was in high school. I went to high school in Mott. I'm from Mott, North Dakota. I'm actually from a suburb of Mott, Bentley, which is a small town about 10 miles. There's Bentley, Burnt, and Mott.
Okay.
Well, Bentley, Burnt kids went to Mott, so we went to Mott High School. And I graduated from there. I was always interested in sports because my dad was just a sports fanatic. When we grew up, there wasn't so much, there wasn't TV like there is now where you could watch 32 games and, every 5 minutes you can switch to a different game.
Yeah.
But he had 4 or 5 radios in our house.
Oh.
And he loved Major League Baseball. So he'd listen to the Minnesota Twins in the daytime and the St. Louis Cardinals in the nighttime. And he could pick all these stations up. And I just listened, that's what we did. We got in the car to go to Mott to practice or something. We'd have a baseball game on or a basketball game, and I grew up listening to those guys do it, and then guys like Russ Smith and Raj Higgins, that's who I grew up with, and those guys were kind of my idols when I was growing up. And I thought, God, I'd like to do that. So my sophomore year in high school, I sat in the stands and had a little tape recorder, and I played on the varsity, so I broadcast the JV games into the tape recorder.
That's awesome.
And that's how I got started. And I was doing it when I was a senior. And the guy that owned the radio station in Lemon, South Dakota, Larry Bauer, was there to do the Lemon Mott game. And he came over and introduced himself. And he said, would you be interested I said, I love radio. I said, well, I'm going to call you tomorrow and we'll set up a program. We'll call it Mott High School News. So, so I did that for my senior year. I'd call down there and record they have for hot lunch today, just simple little goofy stuff. But I did that for a whole year. And then in the summer, he said, you want to come down and work? Because he was a lead instructor at Brown Institute, which is was at the time the top broadcasting school in the nation, and it still is. And I was going to go there. And he retired from that and bought the station in Lemon and in Millbank, South Dakota. I went down and worked the summer. And he said, Rod, stay here, he said, and work. I'll pay you to work for me. You do really well. And he said, I'll I'll just pay you and you work for me and I'll instruct you and work with you just like you were in school, but it's a job. And I started doing it, and he started, first thing I did, there was a Lemon High School versus Faith South Dakota football game. He said, you're going to do the game. I'll set it up for you.
Whoa.
And I did the game. So then he said, and it got into the winter, and he said, you're going to do the Lemon and Hettinger wrestling match. I had never seen never had seen one.
Yeah.
So I went, and I had no clue what was going on. So I'd say, yeah, that guy took him down, or John took Dallas down, Dallas took, there's a point on the scoreboard. I got done. He said, you don't have to do wrestling anymore. He says, I'll do it. So that and hockey, that's how I got out of hockey and wrestling.
Okay.
I didn't have a clue, and did that. But everything else, he just let me do. And I mean, it was the greatest experience I ever had. And I owe a lot to him, because I was there for a year and a half, and he kind of just gave me free rein. And if I needed to be reined in, he'd rein me in. And if I didn't, he'd just let me do it.
Man.
That's how I picked it up. Yeah.
That's a great story.
That was in 1972 and 73. So that's like 50 years ago.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
And you caught the bug right then and there.
Yeah.
And you were
I
just
had the
hooked.
bug before that, but that really piqued my interest and really got me going on it.
Did your dad listen and be like, oh my God, I can't believe you're on the radio?
Oh, my dad was just, I think my dad still, wherever he's at, I think he's still thrilled.
Yeah.
Both my mom and dad, because they both were such big sports fans, that's what Rod was doing, that he actually got to do what he loved to do, and people like to listen to him. So I guess it worked out okay.
That's awesome. Yeah. So you're doing high school games. When does Dickinson State come into the picture?
I started in KDIX in the spring of 1974.
Wow.
So this will be my 50th year at KDIX this upcoming May, and 52nd year in radio. So I started Dickinson State 1974. I started radio and TV at KDIX. I went to school at that time in 73 when I left Lemon. They had a broadcasting course here. They had a radio station, a 1 year, they called it a bachelor's degree in radio. It was a 1 year course that you took, and then after that you went on to speech and theater and stuff.
Okay.
But so I took that with, Bernie Marsh, who owns the Esquire?
Yep.
Bernie was in that class. I mean, there was a bunch of us in that class, and we kind of laugh about it now. But yeah, so I got that, and two of the instructors were the people that owned KDIX Radio. I got done with the class in the spring, and they contacted me and said, do you want to come to work for us? We'd like you to work for us. So we want you to do TV and radio. So I started in TV and radio, doing TV news and radio sports in 74. And my real start in football was for Dickinson State football and basketball. Bob Weiler did it about as long as I did. He did it for just about 50 years where I did it. So about 1976, right about when Hank started, I think. First year I just did on-field stuff, and Bob did the play-by-play. And then after that, I kind of went up in the booth and did the play-by-play. Mm-hmm. And that was probably 70, I think Hank's first, maybe second year that Hank was head coach. And I've been doing it ever since then. So,
what was the first year with Bijou at the head coaching position?
What was his first year?
Yeah.
Oh man.
If no, just like what was it like? Do you remember?
It was like almost like his last year. Hank was very good coach then and very good coach, and it didn't change a lot. But they ran the I formation, and they had a couple of tight ends and the wide receiver. Once in a while, they put a guy out wide and in the slot, and he basically did the same thing. And he just had real horses. I just remember how big and strong those now it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
You recruit. I mean, there's some teams I'm sure that do it, but Pete he's got good size, mm-hmm. and he's got great speed and great athletes. And when Hank started, when I remember those offensive linemen were big, the running backs were just mm-hmm. big and strong. The tight ends were big tackles. Playing tight end, and it was just I think it was a more physical brand. What I remember from when Hank started was just the teams were so strong and physical, and their mm-hmm. opponents were too. I just remember, I can't remember what year it was, but like 81 when they played Concordia, and God, and the players were just, they can get nasty now, but back then they were just, tough and mean. It was like, you're in the rodeo now, so you better be ready to go. And and it is that way now too, but it's just a little bit different. But then it was like, holy cow, these guys, I'm glad, because I thought about coming here to play football. I was recruited by Bob Lassiter. Okay. I was a quarterback at Mott, and I came for a visit, and the other quarterback they had recruited was from New England. It was Doug Olson. Well, it took me about 2 minutes to figure out that I probably won't be playing quarterback at Dickinson State because Doug Olson held records for a long, long time.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, he was a really all-conference quarterback, and maybe I better look for a different field. And radio, luckily, was there for me, so that's what I did.
That's 50 years, so you've probably seen 20,000 plus games at least.
Oh, yeah.
More than that.
Well, I don't, I haven't broadcast that many games, but
Right.
I've seen,
A lot.
a lot of games. Yeah. So I don't know if it's people, that's one of the questions I always get asked, and I don't count games. So, I don't know. It's hard to say, but, you figure out you probably need 200 games over, play-by-plays over a year, maybe 100. So, it's a lot of games, but I just like the game. So I said, the hard thing now for me isn't so much the games anymore, because the games I hope I can keep doing for a little while, but the travel now has gotten harder for me. That's the hardest thing. And once I get to where we're going and do the games, that's a piece of cake. It's just sometimes getting there. I don't like to travel as much as I used to. So.
Right. Yeah. Well, even when I was playing, when we would be in the Frontier Conference, we would take all those long road trips to Oregon. Yeah. I remember you coming with distinct memories, and I mean that's you show a lot of. I mean, obviously you love it, but to go from North Dakota all the way to Oregon for a game is a lot.
And we've had some long road trips now too. Long. And those road trips, and you're just riding in a charter, so people go, what's hard about that? Well, I'll take you with on that.
Yeah.
I'll take you with on that Oregon trip when the bus breaks down and there's 88 of us in one bus, and we're sitting on laps and sitting on shoulders, and then you'll see how much fun. But how much fun. But yeah, that's kind of the hard part,
Yeah.
So it's interesting. Then I battled through some health problems, so that makes it. Yeah. Then you recover from that, and it just you just work hard at things, and the play-by-play, I just love to do it too much just to give it up yet. And as long as my boss doesn't say, Rod, you're done, or my wife says you got to quit, or somebody says you're no good anymore, maybe it's time to quit. But I haven't had all three at one time. Maybe one or the other, but not all three. So
well, I got to tell you, and I was so happy when you say you do the podcast. But I've been getting into radio and play-by-play, and I got to say one of my heroes was you.
Oh well, thank you.
I appreciate it. You're the voice you have and the way you carry yourself, and you kind of you make everybody feel like they're watching the game
on the radio,
and it's a good feeling when you hear your voice come across the waves.
That's always been my goal, is try to make it a picture for people listening on the radio. And what's amazing now is I've been doing it a long time, and there's a lot of younger people coming up now, but more of them more so on the TV side. There's so many communication. There's Beck Television now. There's PSP, and all those guys are so good. Yeah. But they have the video to go with the picture. And I always listen to him, and I always say, well, he'd really be good on radio, because just the way he does it on TV, he paints the picture anyway. Yeah. And I always said, to me, a good radio guy is a guy when you're driving from Crosby, North Dakota to Mott, North Dakota, and you're listening to the game, and you never turn the radio off. Then you got then the guy's doing his job. And that's what I try to do. I just try to make the game interesting, even if it's 42-0, and try to paint the picture of what's going on. So
you do an excellent job of that.
I worked hard at it, and I keep working hard. It's like anything you do. If you work hard at it, you should be good at it. And if you're not, maybe it's time not to do it anymore. So
talking a little bit more about Bluehawk football, is there any games that come to mind that are really stick out in your brain?
There's a lot of games that stick out. I think a couple of games, and I can't even remember. I remember people that were at the games, and I don't remember the year of the game, but I remember one year we played Chadron State, and I think that was Hank, was coaching probably in the late 80s, early 90s, and we were behind at the halftime. It was like 28-6, and everybody left. I mean, the crowd, I'd never seen, it was old Whitney Stadium.
Okay.
It was hunting season, and it was like, that's over with, and it was 28-6, and I think it got 34-6, and then Dickinson State came back and won 37-34. And Pat Fadden, who was president of the Booster Club, and I don't know, you're probably too young to remember Pat, but he's just a great guy, and he left. He left the game, our Booster Club. So he never lived it down, because they came back and won the game, 37. That was one game. But as I think back off the top of my head now, I can't remember who played in the game, who was the quarterback, but it was just a great comeback. And then one of the best games in recent memory I've done was 2 years ago or 3 years ago, when we went to Kansas Wesleyan in the semifinals or quarterfinals of the NAIA playoffs. We had upset Northwestern Iowa 14-6 the week before, and then had to go talk about a long road trip down to Salina, Kansas. That was a long road trip, but that ended up 44-43. We got beat. Otherwise, we would have been in the Final Four. And that team was when Hayden Gibson was quarterback, and that group played. And that was a great team. I mean, they were excellent. And we won that game. I always thought, maybe there's my shot to do a national championship game.
Yeah.
And it just, they scored right at the end, and we couldn't score. And Hayden Gibson threw for about 500 yards that game. It was just an amazing game. And offensively, Dickinson State, and them, it was just back and forth and never a down. So those two games, just off the top of my head. And there's a lot.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
A lot in between. But
is Hayden Gibson one of the best quarterbacks to ever come here?
There's that question I don't want to answer again. I'm going to say Hayden Gibson's one of the best. I'm going to say Jeff Peck's one of the best. Brian Zupke's one of the best. Those guys, Troy Glee there was just so many guys that played quarterback that are all great. I don't know if anybody could throw the ball better or further than Hayden did and throw it accurately. I mean, I always give him a bad time. I said, Hayden, you're in my top 2. Oh, no, I'm not. Yes, you are, Hayden. But I don't know. But yeah, he was outstanding. But, Jeff Peck was so good, too. He was just a leader, and he'd win and never hardly lost a game, maybe lost 3 games in his 3 years at starting quarterback. And Hayden was outstanding. And Troy Glebe was another one that was a good quarterback. And Brian Zupke was, came in from NDSU or UND. I can't remember. He came in with Dave Olette in that group. And, Brian was he could throw and he could run. And there's just been a lot of good quarterbacks at Dickinson State. Yeah.
You've been around the game, like you said, 50 years. And from Dickinson State's standpoint, seen almost every game every season. When you see the game transition from Coach B under center to Coach Stanton's kind of pick it up, shotgun, pass it around, what has that transition been like for you to watch?
Oh, it's been fun. I mean, I just, somebody always says to me, what's your favorite sport to broadcast? Well, my favorite sport is basketball.
Yeah.
But my favorite sport to broadcast is football.
Really?
Yeah, I just love to do football, The older I get, the eyesight isn't getting so good, so I'd like to be closer to the field.
Yeah.
Now up here in this beautiful press box we have here, I mean, this is as nice as any place from Minneapolis to Seattle I've been, but, you're getting a little further away, but I just love to broadcast football, and I love the wide open football. I liked it when Hank did it too. Yeah. Hank was a little easier to call because it was a little more condensed, so you knew kind of where, you had the fullback, the tailback, and it was easy to foul. Now, you spread out, you go stack trips over here, you go twin over here, so you got to kind of, but the most important thing is to keep an eye on the football, and that's usually the quarterback and what he does with the football, and just kind of go from there. So it's kind of, not a real difference than when Hank played than Pete played, other than it could spread around a little bit more, and you got to be more aware of, instead of maybe 2 guys maybe coming into play, there might be 4 or 5 guys coming in that might have the potential to touch football. And one of the things about football that when I'm here with Dickinson State is Jim Dowell does the color for me, and Jim is just outstanding.
Oh, Jim's a man.
So I mean, it's just like, I just count on Jim. If I miss something, Jim's got it, or Jim misses something, I've got it. So it's really nice. Now, when you go on the road by yourself, it's a little more difficult. But again, one of the beauties about radio is if there's a snap to Brian Zupke, and he gives it to Dallas Hansen. Oops. No, he didn't get it. That's Rod Kleinjan. That you can correct yourself, or you can just leave it. Nobody knows it because they don't see it. So you just move on to the next play. So
do you when you're on the road, do you keep stats yourself too?
I keep stats no matter what I do. I keep a running play-by-play of football and basketball, no matter what whether it's college or high school.
Was that tough to pick up on?
I started doing it right away when I started, and people watch me and say, "How can you do that?" And then the game gets over with, and they sometimes you go on the road and they lose their stats or something. The other team, and Pete will just say, "Go up to Rod. He'll have the stats, and he'll be within 10, 15 yards passing, running." And I usually am. So I don't know. Wow. I just do it, and I don't know.
Just how your brain works.
Yeah, just how. And like I said, when I'm home, it's nice because you do it now. You do it, and you're kind of watching and writing. You shorten it up a little bit, but when you're by yourself, sometimes you're writing and you look up, and with Pete's offense, they go pretty fast sometimes. So, you go, okay, now what happened? Yeah. So you got to be aware of it. But yeah, I don't know. I've just always done that. But and I just keep I don't keep, tackles and that, but I keep rushing, passing yards and receiving yards and that type of thing. And for the teams, rushing and just total yardage type of thing. Yeah. So I like to throw stats in. I don't want to overdo it, but if
it's a big part of the game.
Yeah, well, if you got a good back like Braden Zuroff, people, want to kind of know if that's his 10th carry, how many yards, has he got 10 yards, has he got 50 yards, or, you know, you don't have to overdo it, but it's nice to know every once, that put Braden over 100 yards or something, and it's I'm unofficial, I'm not official, but I'm usually pretty close, so.
Yeah, I mean, the few times I've done a broadcast, I've just done color, and I did a few play-by-plays, but yeah, that's got to be, I mean, like the old saying, you do something for 10,000 hours, you become a master at it, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm just used to doing it. In fact, it's hard. I did a game. What game did I did some game, and Jim kept stats, and I wasn't very comfortable.
Really
doing the play-by-play because I wasn't, you know, keeping stats and stuff. So
no kidding, you're used to that.
Just used to that. Yeah, it's just a habit. Yeah.
You and Jim have worked together a long time.
Oh yeah, Jim's been. Well, I just asked him too the other day. He just celebrated his 59th birthday, and he's been with us. He graduated from here and started working on. I think Jim's been there. I've been there 50 years. I think Jim's been there just about 35 years, 36 years.
Wow.
And Jim does a lot of, you know, especially during the basketball season. You know, Jim does such a good job in play-by-play that we just split it up. I told Jim about 10 years ago, hey, when it's college basketball season, pick the game. You know, the Bluehawks are playing. Men and women usually play together. You want to do the men, fine. I'll do the women, vice versa. Well, he always likes doing the first game, so he usually does the women, and I do the men. And that's really nice because then I go on the road, then I got to do both of them. So then I realize, hey, it's good to have Jim, and he does a super job. So, yeah, and he does that. We split high school up, too, so it's worked out really well. And I try to get him as much play-by-play. And I've done enough games. He could do as many games as he wants.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
From an outsider looking in, I talked to Coach Stan about this, but for this year's Bluehawk team, they went on the road, lost to a close one with Rocky. They went for 2, didn't get the 2, end up losing the game. Now they've rattled off 8 straight wins. What has that been from, like, you're looking on the press box, you obviously watch every game. Yeah. How has this team done that? 8 wins in a row.
They're just, I mean, he's got a very good football team. Offensively, they're outstanding. Defensively, they're just, you know, they got some very good football players, and they're just solid from front to back. Offensively, I'd like to kind of call them a spectacular team because they've got, I mean, they're averaging just about 40 points a game.
Yeah.
And I mean, they've got, you know, Will Madler came in from Northern State, and I mean, he's the real deal. I mean, he's a very good quarterback, and he's a coach's kid, smart kid. He throws a great ball, just has a great knowledge of the game. That gives you a great start on offense. And then he's got a couple of great running backs in Zuroff and this young Brown kid from Seattle, who are from Washington State, who's really good. And his receiving core is like top notch. I mean, you got, well, Caden Kuntz is hurt now, but you got Caden, you got Noah Sickler, you got the Bowden kid, you got 2 great tight ends, and then you got 2 or 3 other kids that can fill in. So when they throw the ball around, they're just fun to watch offensively.
Yeah.
And they have been all year long. I mean, even against Rocky, they had a lot of yards, just didn't score maybe the points they should have scored. And since then, they've been able to do it. And they just do it. And defensively, Coach T does just a superb job. He has some very good kids. Crew Mattern, you know, who is probably as good as there's been defensively. And I don't have to tell you, you were around. You know how good.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm sure there's maybe somebody as good or better that I'm missing. But he's been one of the best I've seen play. And you know, it's been fun for me with Crew because I had him for 3 years, watched him play football at Dickinson High.
Right.
And now, you know, it seems like football players now play forever, you know.
Yeah.
You got an injury year, got a COVID, you know, you're playing until you're 25, 26 years old. So I've watched him play football for about 8 years, and every game he amazes me as what he does. And that's kind of what that defense does. They're just strong and physical up front, got good young linebacker, and they're young.
Yeah.
I mean, Crew, I think, you know, I looked at my roster the other day, and I think Crew is the only true senior on the defensive side. Everybody else, you know, might be a senior, but I think a couple of them could come back if they wanted to. Now, whether they do or not, you don't know. But and they just play so well as a team. I think this team for me is just, you know, you say team, both offense and defense, and it's a team that does everything well together. They're synchronized together. They offensively, they block well. The line is really good. The backs are really good. Yeah. Everybody's really good. Now, I don't know if it's the greatest team ever, but, you know, time will tell. But boy, they're fun to watch, and they just play hard, and they play well. They're very competitive. So it'll be interesting to see how the year pans out here with a few games to go.
Yeah, for sure. One thing I really wanted to ask you coming into this was your mindset when you go to put the headset on before calling a game. What do you study the program a little bit? Do you say something to yourself before you go into a basketball, football game? What is your mindset going in?
You know, most of the work for football season for me is on Sunday and Monday. I do almost all of my prep work on Sunday and Monday, especially for the college. The high school I might do a little bit on Wednesday or Thursday, depending upon which game I'm doing. But Dickinson State, when I get done with the game, Sunday morning I go into work and I put all the stuff that I do away for the past week, and then usually by Sunday morning or Sunday afternoon, Pete has rosters to me, and then I go get all their opponent, all the stats they're doing, put together my pregame stuff, and get it all ready to go, and then for my audio cuts for it, and then get that together, and then Monday I usually cut it, and it has to change before Saturday. I'll change it, and I always interview Pete on Thursday. That's when I tape I tape a show with Pete that's for coffee with the coaches and a pregame show, and we just decided instead of doing two, we just put it into one, so it runs Saturday morning in our coffee with the coaches program,
nice.
And then it runs for the pregame show prior to kickoff. So we do that. So by the time Thursday I'm done with Pete, I'm ready for the football game. So the game day, I just go up, put the headsets on, wait for kickoff, and go to work.
Do you think Pete Stanton has a chance to become the best head coach Dickinson State's ever seen?
Well, we talked about Mount Rushmore, and the guy that's on my top, he's got a shot at it. It depends upon what he wants to do. I mean, he's as good a coach as we've had here. I mean, there's very few universities that can have a guy coach national championship teams in track and field and have a chance to do that in football. So, anytime Pete coaches, he's got a chance to be the best there is, and he definitely has that possibility here if he wants to keep. I hope he keeps coaching.
Me too.
I enjoy the heck out of him, and I enjoy working with him. He's, Hank was superb. They're both different personalities. Both have been, I've only had two coaches to work with.
I was just going to say that, yeah.
So I don't know what it would be like to have 4 or 5 coaches like some universities go through, but I've been blessed with here at 2 of the best. And I mean, it's for football, it's been unbelievable. I mean, if somebody would have told me, Rod, you'd get to work with 2 of the best coaches ever, and you only have to work with 2 of them, I go, you're crazy. Well, maybe
it doesn't
maybe
happen anymore.
No, it just doesn't.
It doesn't.
Yeah, and I hope Pete puts in, how many years Hank coached, 30 plus years. I hope Pete does it too. I don't know if Pete wants to do it or not, or if he does such a good job on the AD end. And
I know,
to be honest, I don't know how he does both, but he does, and he does really well at both of them. So I suppose someday he'll have to make a decision. Say, hey, do I want to keep coaching? Do I want to do this or do that? But I hope, I don't have a lot of years left to do this, so I hope he waits till I don't have any more years. Then he can do whatever he wants to do. Somebody else can deal with it then.
Well, Rod, I don't want to hold you up too long. We've been going about 30 minutes here, but my one question I ask every guest, swim lessons is what the podcast is called, and it's about overcoming the tough times. Yeah. You mentioned you've had this long career, you've had a few tough spells with health, whatever it is. What's something that Rod Kleinjan says to himself when he finds his back up against the wall and has to overcome some different obstacles?
Well, I just, I've battled through, I had heart problems and I had kidney cancer. And, there's been some times where you just, you're laying in a hospital bed, or you're thinking, and I said, I got a family, and I've got friends, and I've got a job, and I love what I do. Mm-hmm. So get up in the morning and do what you got to do, and do it the best you can do it. And that's what I try to do. And I said, you can't overcome it. Sooner or later, there comes a time when you can't do it, but, you always hope that time's later. So I just get up. A perfect example, one of the things that I decided 15, 16 years ago in 2006, when I had all my heart problems, congestive heart failure, I'd like to drink a lot of pop, and I like to smoke a lot of cigarettes.
Yeah.
Well, I still like to drink pop, but I've cut down on that, and I completely quit cigarettes. And I started after my cardiologist says, why don't you go work out? They've got a good cardio rehab center at the hospital in Dickinson. So they set a program up in 2006, in December of 2006, and every day since then, Monday through Friday, I go up there for an hour, and they got a program. I walk on a treadmill and do that. And there's times when you're traveling, like with the college, you can't do it. But if I get to a motel, I'll try and get on. So I try to work out about an hour every day.
It's awesome.
And I think, to answer your question, you just got to do what you got to do, and you got to work at it, and you got to try to do it. And that's all I try to do. I just try to do it, and I hope I do it well, and hope it helps me make it through every day, and that's kind of what I do.
Well, that's awesome. I appreciate it. And that's a great answer. That's a good call. And do a quick plug. What's the radio station, and where can they find you?
Okay, well, we have 1230 AM. That's where we've been forever. We have an FM 100.7. And, of course, then we have internet. You can go over to Germany. I had a guy text me from Germany about 2 years ago. We listened to the Bluehawk football game, and I didn't know the guy, and I'd never heard from him since. But he got a text message, and it said we listened to the Bluehawk game in Berlin, Germany, and so you can listen on the internet wherever you want, and a lot of people do that now, and it's kind of fun now too because we work with Consolidated Television here, and we simulcast. They take our audio and they film, and they do a really great job. So, that gets to go out and people can watch it too. So, you get more people interested and more people following too. So that's kind of nice. So, But that's where you can get us. You can get us on 1230 AM, FM 100.7, www.kdix.net, and home games, whether it's football, basketball, baseball, on Consolidated and KDIX.
I know I'll be listening, and I hope a lot of other people do, but appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming in, and I hope I get to keep listening to you for a very long time.
Yeah. Great interviewer, too.
Thank you.
You did a great job.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
You know when an interview goes fast?
What's that?
When the interview does a good job, and this went really fast, so you did super.
Hey, that means a lot coming from you. I appreciate it. Well, good luck tomorrow. I'll see you probably before the game, hopefully. And, appreciate all you do for Bluehawks.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Rob.